Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing all right. Um, I just decided to make this stream to get some stuff out of my chest. It's not going to be a particularly stream that is dedicated to some particular subject, but just to get some stuff out of it. All right. I'm going to start with the obvious situation of this happening in the United States, the consequences that this will have in the long term to our political order in the world. In my mind, all of these events were the conclusion of the war, and we were still living the effects. What do I mean with this? I'm saying, I mean that we were still living in an order that was created after World War II, where basically two potencies divided the world: the Americans on one side, Soviets in another. This might sound funny, uh, because the Soviet Union has fallen a long time ago, the 80s, or less. But hello, Kitty. But what I mean with this is that this has been a long path. Okay, then we just got a potency that was the United States as the sole. Hello, Stephen Becker. That was the sole country, let's call it like this, or bloc to control the world. And that American dominance did not have, up until maybe the late 90s, it did not have any kind of able answer to counter it anywhere. Okay, even Russia became a bit controlled by the United States. And then you have Putin, and Putin is a reaction to that. What I'm trying to say is this: the United States won a war, let's call it like this, but in winning the war, they lost it. Because instead of doing something that would be normal, and that is not to become the police of the world, but to help to develop other countries into the same type of organization that they had, a democratic organization, no. They simply started uh, to interfere with everyone, just like they were doing in the Cold War. Okay, they did it often. Sometimes they were beneficial. For example, after the revolution in '74 in Portugal, they avoided, they contributed to avoid the civil war in Portugal. Okay, they also helped the Germans and the French that were helping us to control the situation and to regain a democratic organization that we still have. Okay, so we must not consider that all that the Americans did was just in their interest, was just greed. No, you cannot go down that path. You have to go down the path of logic, because if you go in the path of emotions, you are going to end up in dead ends, literally. So, as I was saying, and then, like I was saying, instead of them trying to expand that democratic order in a peaceful way, in a non threatening way, even to the Middle East, even to the Muslim countries, look, instead of doing that, they started to take policies of maintaining power, meaning after the end of the Cold War, and this is my, and remember please, again, I will reiterate this, these are my personal beliefs, okay? These are my personal opinions. And this is the idea that I have from what I see. Okay, so if you don't agree, that is all good. No issues here. Now, as I was saying, after that, all of this, you have events that prove my point that the United States were serving as police of the world. So, what this keeps happening. United States that were serving as the police of the world, but they were doing it to maintain their power and to increase their power and to increase their wealth. In doing that, they became a country that was completely intertwined with other countries, Metro and Katsai. They became a country that was completely intertwined with other countries, with Europe, with Japan, with Korea, with the ancient space of the English, of the, let's call it English, but British Empire, okay, meaning Australia, Canada, and via their surrogates in South America. And they use those surrogates to control countries. The only country where they were not successful was in Brazil. Why? Because Brazil has its own culture that is basically very similar or almost a copy paste of Portuguese culture that has a strong national identity. The other countries, they had to form uh, their identity from the Spanish colonial, let's call it, system. When La Casa de las Indias controlled how all of those states were organized. Some states have a national identity derived from the cultures that were already there and that were integrated. You can mention, for example, Mexico, Ecuador, and Chile. And then you have Argentina, that is a funny thing, because they are probably the most European country in South America. Okay, but let's continue. Then what does the United States start to do? Gulf War, Afghanistan, a series of wars in an effort to control, using surrogates like Europe. We were used, all of us, the United Kingdom, the allies in Europe, we were all used. Also, Israel. And I feel very worried when I see people thinking that is Israel that is controlling the United States. Do you have any idea, and if you are an American, you know this, how many Jewish people live in the United States and that are Americans? Do you have an idea how much money they have? How much leverage they have over power? Does that mean that we are in some kind of conspiracy theory where the Rothschild control everything? You have to reverse your view and see this as an America that is an empire that has an elite, and the Jewish people, let's call it the people of Jewish origin, because, and don't confuse this with religion, please. A normal Jewish person that likes to pray the way he prays, that likes to do his thing, is not the same as these people. But this is an elite that, in the times of the Confederacy, for example, they supported the Confederacy. If you go and check your history books, you will see that. Who were the advisors? Okay. And then you have this American empire that has this satellite in the Middle East that is called Israel. So when you approach this situation, you have to approach both. Okay? Stay with me. You have all of these movements that the Americans do in order to control. In Europe, NATO, that had stopped to have a real role, suddenly becomes important again, let's call it like this, because of Putin. Now, Yeltsin brought Putin around because he was the most grey, anonymous personality that he could think of. Former KGB agent, competent. I think when he started working, let's call it like this, to Yeltsin, for Yeltsin, sorry, he worked first to the mayor of Moscow, something like that. He was a rather unknown person. In the KGB, in the army, they knew him. Apparently, when he was in East Germany, he was an extremely effective agent. He was cold, he was highly intelligent, and he was highly effective. Then you have this man. This man comes to power. The first thing that comes out of his mouth is he would like to approach the EU. He would like to be a part of, even be a part of the EU. And then suddenly, interest groups in Russia told them, nah, we can make a profit in other ways. So what did they do? They tried to influence all the countries that used to be in their sphere of influence. There were two groups of countries that he could never leverage on due to historical conditions of being persecuted and attacked. The Baltic states, if you look into the history of the Baltic states, see what the Soviets and the Russians did to them, and Poland. Why? A Catholic, very European Poland that detests them. And then you have the satellites of that were here even in the time of the Czars, which are Hungary, okay, that had more or less an empire, that had you will find ethnic Hungarians in Ukraine, in Poland, in Romania, okay, and you had the Serbs, and the Serbs have always been, they have this kind of like the British with the Americans, the special relationship with Russia, because they are Slavs, because by historical reasons it was convenient for the Russian Empire to have a destabilizer agent near the Ottomans, and a lot of things that would take more than one stream to cover. Now, NATO continued to exist. Why? In this form. Remember at what point of history we are. We have a Russia that wants to move further into intertwine the relationship with the West, that is being influenced by the West, and then suddenly money comes in, corruption goes rampant, and Putin changes his tune completely. And he becomes the opponent. There, NATO has a reason. And now they are continuing to have this idea of using NATO as an excuse to have some kind of control over Europe. And you have France, and you have Germany, and trying to convince also the United Kingdom, which, like it or don't like it, these three countries have always been the motor of Europe, alongside Spain and Portugal in the Iberian Peninsula, but as a unit. Okay, that is correct, Mitro. And you have these three key countries that are saying, two of them are saying no, and one where, go figure, Brexit happened, is always standing on the line. And this is all just a matter. Look, I'm just presenting facts and giving my opinion. This is not some kind of conspiracy idea. I detest those types of sayings. I don't take conclusions without facts. I'm very in that aspect. I'm very German. I'm very Prussian. I'm very organized. I detest it. And now they are still continuing. The latest attempt was this: Mr. Trump proposed that NATO buys weapons from the Americans to supply to Ukraine. Now, why would they do this? Perhaps because the European procurement that is laying the foundations for a future option to NATO, a completely European option. I wouldn't go so far as calling it a European army, at least for now, but in 5 years' time, I am pretty sure an European army will appear. A military guy, I think he's an admiral in our armed forces that has served in NATO, that was in Africa, a very experienced guy. He was talking about how they want to turn NATO, that is basically a command base. If there's a command here, there's a command there. Okay, they want to turn that into a European model of defense, meaning, for example, have a regional command in Scandinavia to control a determined area, have another one in Poland, which is in the border, okay, to Central Europe, and another one in the Balkans, and then one in the Iberian Peninsula and Italy as peripheral commands. Okay, this is what is being drawn out, and Trump knows that the Europeans are not going to buy their weapons in the weapon procurement they are doing now. They, and remember why this is so very important, Europe, the EU, meaning the other countries, have proposed to the UK, and I think they will accept it if they have not accepted fully by now. I think they are just discussing the details. Look, come to this weapon procurement system, contribute to the budget like we do, and you will be a part of it. You will produce weapons also for this common effort of rearming Europe. And he knows that Europeans are not going to buy weapons from the United States. And more important than that, the companies that sustain this group of oligarchs that is being created in the United States, much similarly to what happened in Russia, and this is something that gives me the creeps. This gives me the creeps, and I hope, let's say it like this, that their actions are false. They are not able to do whatever they want to do. And those weapon companies that want to make a profit are telling Trump, solve this fucker. We put you there. We are paying you. Now do your job. And now we have what? We have an old Trump. We have a sick Trump. And now Vance went to the house of Mr. Murdoch to talk with Murdoch and his son. Why? And the generals of Murdoch, the generals of Murdoch are now actively attacking Trump with this Epstein cash cow. Look, and you start to see a pattern. You start to see that they are now going to try. I hope I'm wrong, but they are going to try to put Vance in power. And I don't know if the Democrats want, number one, or can do anything about this. I see ICE with a state-like budget. I see them more and more militarized. I see them more and more fanaticized. I see them starting to attack groups. Oh, how nice. A troll. Well, go fuck yourself. Then, as I was saying, before I was interrupted by an idiot that is gone, I have no pity with idiots, sorry. As I was saying, you have these interest groups that are now moving parts because they know their clown in chief is no longer able to do what they want to do. And what did they want to do? They wanted to dismantle the EU, okay? And Stephen Banker here is making an interesting question. How would this affect Britain when Scotland declares her independence? It would break Britain. I have always been a supporter, for personal reasons, of the Scottish independence. Because every time I spoke with the Scottish, they told me about how they were, let's call it like it is, raped by England. And in my view, either Scotland becomes a country, an effective country, and not a puppet, with its own rule of law and an equal partner with England, or the United Kingdom will not exist in the future. How that will happen, I don't know. But if this does not happen, I guarantee you that Scotland one day or another is going to break from England. And then England will lose that relevance, okay? And England, the UK will lose that relevance, and it will become just a minor regional actor, and it will fall under the influence of other larger countries, like for example France, like for example Germany, and the US as a complete group. Okay, now let's go back to the interest groups. Uh, a lot of people, really have always talked about these conspiracy theories about groups that control the world for one reason or another. But the hard truth here is that there is no invisible boogeyman. You can see them, you can point at them, and you can know who they are. You know who controls the newspapers. Let's call it like this, the media. You know who controls most of the media. You know who is interested in having a profit. You know who is propping up Farage in the UK. We know all of that. We know why Tate still goes on the social media. We know why in this platform, in YouTube, voices that are saying type of speech, this type of speech, you know, I always answer Stephen back. I interrupt my thing of thought and I thought sorry, and I try to answer everyone. Okay, now look at how wealthier since the COVID episode these people have become. They use the disease that was probably, and I will say this very, after talking with a friend that is a doctor, okay, after talking with a friend that is a doctor, he told me this. This virus, COVID, was too perfect to appear just like that, without any previous signs. Look, you look, for example, at a disease like Ebola. I don't think it's, I don't know if this is the English enunciation, but it's Ebola, the disease in Africa. That disease evolved from some place in the jungles of Africa where it contaminated a human group, and that human group transmitted it to other human groups, and this is how it all started. And that friend, that doctor friend, he told me this disease for us, it's too perfect. This disease was already developing when it surged. And we really, and he told me also this, we really don't know if it started in China or if it started in the United States, in Europe, in Africa, wherever. But wherever it started, it's like if this disease, when you are playing a game and you use a cheat, okay, to increase your stats before you start to game, you know, you know, it's like, let's put this here. And that disease pretty much paralyzed the world. And during that, no one took that much attention to what was being done in the background. Okay? No one looked at Russia. No one looked at the United States. No, and what did Trump do during COVID? Jack shit. He didn't do nothing. Okay? He just made a mess. And then he got kicked out. And this, I believe, was his second chance to do what they want to do, which is to install an oligarchic rule. This is what these people want. Uh, Stop thinking about conspiracy theories and start thinking about greedy people. Greedy. Families of greedy people. They just want to profit. And they don't like a system of rule like it existed in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom now, it does not have these protections anymore, but a system of rule that exists like, for example, in Europe, where any decision that is taken, it passes by a filter of previous appreciation, okay, a previous appreciation of the social consequences of that rule. Where you have a sugar tax, where you have a salt tax, where any product that you are going to sell to people, you need to first make sure it's safe. In the United States, they don't do it like this. You want to know how they do it in the States? They create a product, for example, a new food colorant. They put it in the cookies and they sell it. If someone can prove that bloody colorant is harmful for you, hmm, then they will call the product on and they will ban the colorant and whatever. If it doesn't, if you die, and and no one can prove that you died because of that colorant or that you got the disease because of that, they don't give a fuck. Just like in Flint, Michigan, for example. I will tell you this. I won't talk about it. Go to YouTube and see and write Flint, Michigan, and see what happened in that town. It has to do with water quality. Just go and see what happened. Okay? Now, these people, they just want to profit. Okay? These are the same people that when the civil war was going on was selling weapons and goods to both sides of the fight. Okay, this was the Fords of their time that was selling engines and military technology to Hitler. Okay, these are the same people. These are the Jewish characters, for example, that were in the in the Russian Empire, plotting against the Tsar, sometimes on his side, other times on the side of the Bolsheviks, and that when they saw that the Bolsheviks were going to win, and they needed to save their asses and their fortunes, they suddenly became devout communists. And when I say Jews, okay, don't take it that way, okay? I'm talking about a large section of the population that just wants to be rich, that just wants to profit. Okay, uh, don't believe in those maniac ideas of aliens, of technology, of what is in Area 51 and all of that crap. Okay, most of the things that we see in the sky, most of the things that we consider, for example, that are UFOs, that are this and that are that, 99% of them have an explanation. 1% we don't have an explanation. That 1% is what we cannot explain. But think about it. Why would an alien cross this space-time infinitum, okay, and go put an anal probe in a hillbilly somewhere in Texas? All of that new age things that were very nice and very good in the 70s and that some are reviving right now. If you were an extraterrestrial, good night, Curious. Thank you for coming. If you were an extraterrestrial being, why would you, how would you know that we were even intelligent or sentient? Okay, but this is a rant for another video, and I would I would perhaps leave that part to number three. That nice guy, excellent channel. Go check him out. He sometimes has some difficulty in speaking, but he's a very good guy. He's an intelligent person and a nice guy. Okay, and he talks a lot about all of this. Now, going back to the subject. Now, and the situation that we have now is this: we have Europe that is unable to stop some of the events that are happening right now. Oh, Mitro, no. I think the aliens would think that Donald Trump is an alien himself. Okay, now we have a situation in which, and I see the videos. You know, as you know, uh, I follow Vegan Lead. The guy is an excellent person. He does an excellent job. I follow All Shorts, also an excellent guy. He does an excellent job, and they talk about these things, okay? And Regan Lead, he goes to the detail in something that I like of presenting his sources, talking about it, discussing it. But we have to understand this. Europe cannot do a bloody thing about what is happening in Gaza. Not the United Kingdom and not the EU. Why? Because we also have a lot of guilt on the plate. We sold weapons to the Israelis. We are still selling weapons to the Israelis. And we want this to stop. But without the big boss, the United States, to tell Israel to stop this shit, or perhaps the Israelis themselves rise up and knock out Bibi Netanyahu from his place of rule, no one is going to be able to do something. Our only hope is that this becomes economically unviable for the ones that are selling the weapons. Okay, if they cannot get a profit out of this, maybe they will stop it. And I'm saying this with sadness because Gaza matters to me. I have told you the story of my family. I have talked about how I heard these stories when I was a kid with my grandfather. My grandfather was born in 1917, okay? So he lived all of that. And he talked with his cousins that told him what happened to the town where where his mother, my great grandmother, was born. Okay? It was razed. They razed the town. First they looted it, then they burned it, and then they razed it, and then they sold the forest over it, the Soviets. Okay? Hitler started the job by killing or removing the Jewish people and the Polish people that lived this because this is East Prussia. In East Prussia you had this. You had Germans, you had Poles, you had Baltics, and then you have Christian, you had Catholics like my family, for example. You had Protestants, you had Jewish people. You had a lot of variety. First came Hitler and did the job, and then the Soviets came in and destroyed. And look, it was a meaningless place somewhere uh, between Kaliningrad and Gdansk. Sorry, and yes, and Gdansk that was sorry, I forgot the German name. Okay, let's continue. But I don't want to talk about it. Uh, so I know, and I have heard these stories. I heard stories of people being left without a homeland. I heard the stories of people being exterminated. I heard the stories of people being removed from history. You know, that little village, it was it maybe it was meaningless, but it was where my grandmother was born, great grandmother was born. Okay, and it would be nice to know that it's still there. Okay, even if today it would be a Polish village, but it would still be there. Okay, and I look at the Palestinians, I look at I look at those kids that are being expelled from their own land, and I see them in 60 years telling this story to their grandchildren. And I put myself in the place of that grandchildren and the hatred that I genuinely felt about the Soviets. Of course, it was also increased by the situation that I was living in a communist heartland in South Portugal. Okay, I was born 1 year after the revolution, so I know it all. Okay, I refused to not speak German with my grandfather when he wanted to speak German with me. I refused to stop speaking German because I wanted to, and it was a part of my history, and I know what I passed because of that. Okay, but another reason why I'm not a bloody racist because I know how it feels being pretty much the same as the other person in front of you and being called a bloody Nazi because you have German blood in you. Okay, but that's history. But the United States, what is worrying me right now is that they are becoming unpredictable. Okay, you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, and they are. I would say they already did it. they completely destroyed the order that existed, and that for better and for worse. I will go through your comment in a moment later, okay? I have to make this point across, okay? Because I don't have any side notes. I just decide the subject that I'm going to talk about it. I memorize it, and I study it in my mind. I have always been able to do this. Of course, often I run, but let's go. Uh, what worries me is this: the United States is becoming very unpredictable. The former order that exists no longer exists. We still have, hello, Cosmonaut. We still have a lot of countries that are in the border, in the line of let's say, of deciding in which side they will be. Some have internal causes, internal factors that create this. Like, for example, the United Kingdom with Brexit, and that disease that is inside of the United Kingdom, that it's called reform and Nigel Farage. Okay, as I told you before, I'm not a leftist because I don't like extremes. I think extremes are an emotional way of connecting with other people. And my idea here is this: we should always go via logic. And United Kingdom right now, and I'm going to talk. Let me just talk about this. Starmer has an unique opportunity to end this. He could issue a series of laws that would end this rise of reform. He cannot play the game of Farage because Farage will always be better than him at the play or at the game of being a demagogue. The only way he can counter this is, for example, do a simple thing like this: take the media law that is, for example, in France. It's very similar to the same media law that we have here in Portugal about fake news, and go to the people and say, there's been a lot of misinformation in the tabloids, there's been a lot of confusion. So from now on, we are going to apply this law, and a law with serious consequences. First, attack the media. Then, he has, if he wants to cut things, let's call it like this, let's call it, in his cabinet, in the system of the state itself, that is still too large for what the United Kingdom is now. The United Kingdom still has remnants of colonial administration, of having colonies to sustain those institutions. And when I'm talking about institutions, I'm also talking about the royal house. Okay, I'm talking about the royals too. And look, I'm a Republican. Okay, a Portuguese Republican, please, not an American Republican. Okay, okay. But if you want to have a king and a queen, why not? It works in other places. It works in Sweden, for example. This is an example. Okay, it can work, but it can work when you don't have, for example, a royal house that consumes so much of the wealth of the country. You could take the chance that you are now going to have after Charles dies, and it won't last that long. Let's be fair, 20 years, maybe. You could take that chance and you could sanitize the royal house. For example, all of those things that now are in the king's property, like, for example, I don't say the seashores, whatever, and a lot of stuff that is today still in that medieval sense of property of His Majesty. Pardon me, His Majesty. You could take all of that, you could allocate it to the state itself, and the king could have a salary like anyone else. The Spanish king, the Spanish king right next here, right next to us, he has a salary. Okay? His mother and his father, the former kings, they have a pension. They are still mandated, even if they are not active, let's call it like this, they when they go to do something in the name of the state, they are paid. When they are in their private life, they pay from their salary, and that salary is decided by the Spanish parliament. Okay, they have. Look, I have no problems with the Spanish, but I don't like monarchies. But their monarchy works. Okay, their their the daughters of the king right now, they are being educated also to work. The king married a divorcee. They have absolutely no issues in saying that. For them, when they are talking about His Majesty, the king is seen as a referee, as seeing someone that always has to have a position that is solely dedicated to his kingdom. He's a server of the kingdom. He does not rule it, he serves it. And in the United Kingdom, you have this bloody mentality that I cannot understand from a human group, United Kingdom, that was so logic, so pragmatic that it influenced the way of thinking of the entire European country to also be pragmatic. I cannot understand how a human group, a group of people in this way does not has the same approach. And no, Starmer has the power to do it. And I think even the king would like, if he wants to ensure that his son will will take over him, like he did from his mother. I think it would be even in the interest of the king to do this. You, like I was saying before when I was talking about Scotland, Scotland could be perfectly well an independent country, a viable country, a country that would not depend of Westminster, and it could still have a king. This would be a compromise that would satisfy everyone. You will have a king. Scotland would be uh, an independent, country. It's not now. I know you say United Kingdom, okay? Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland. But are they really independent countries? There's a lot of Scottish. There are a lot of Scottish people here, but there's one here, Stephen Banker. Stephen Banker. Stephen Banker is Scottish. He could talk about it. Every time the Scottish Parliament has been able to implement some different ways of approaching policies in Scotland, but it still does not have control. Everything is dependent on Westminster. They decide everything. They decided to leave the EU. They left. If we were working in a system of actually independent countries federated in a state, you would have one, two, three, four votes. Scotland would have its vote. Northern Ireland would have its vote. Wales would have this vote, and England would have this vote. And for example, England, even with a larger population, would vote, I want to leave, I want to leave. You would have, for example, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and perhaps Wales say, no, you wouldn't leave. But in this system, you have one of the countries, England, deciding the future of the rest of them. Now, I'm going I'm going now to try and conclude my train of thought so that you understand what I'm talking about. Okay? I am worried that the United States might fall even deeper into the rabbit hole because there are a lot of rich people that have a lot to lose. And don't think that it is Russia that is controlling the United States, that it's Putin. I know we say this, I know we say this as a joke, but don't think it's Putin uh, moving the ropes of the strings, sorry, of his puppets in the United States. It's those interest groups that have the money, have the power, that are financing this. They look. These are the type of people that, for example, were in the city and that in a week they defunded 3 banks in Portugal, a couple of more in Spain, in Greece. Suddenly, the money was gone and our economies crashed. I know, I was in it. I was there. I saw it happening. First, it was one bank, then it was one of the largest and most ancient bank in the entire European country. And why? We followed the money trail. We follow where the event happened. That bank, those banks. Look, Greece was doing a lousy job at controlling its economy. Spain was not doing any good at either, and Portugal also was not doing any good. Okay, there was not a keen eye on the banks to see what the hell they were doing. I'm not saying, look, don't understand this as me saying, oh, they caused the crash. No, because the crash also affected the United Kingdom. Okay, affected the entire European country. If it was not for Finland, Germany, and France to a degree, uh, Europe would have fallen into chaos. Let's be clear about it. They were the only ones that were strong enough, and they were the only ones that saw what was happening and told us. But suddenly that money disappeared. That risk investment that they were doing, that suddenly became a debt that they could not pay, and hence banks fell. The state had to go in and salvage what it could, and we had austerity, and we had, for example, people spending 10 years without a pay rise. They are just now, they are just now reestablish, reestablishing the pace of people, for example, in Portugal and in Spain. There are still people affected by this. I'm one of them. I'm sorry, I won't talk about my line of work, but I was affected by it too, and harshly. Hmm? Now, the city was being used by these interest groups to finance Brexit and suck wealth from Europe. And they had this idea that after Brexit, because these people, they are greedy, but they are also stupid. Because when you are a narcissistic person, you tend to consider others as stupid. Look at Trump. Trump is a narcissistic. Putin is a narcissistic. Okay, these people think that they can do whatever they want, and you won't even know what they are doing, and they are able to control you, and they are able to make you jump at their shots. And then things happen, like for example, the European Union uniting against them, even with that clown Orban squirming like a little pig that he is. He's a greedy little pig that has been using EU funds to restore old palaces and then selling them to his oligarch partners. And that now everyone in look into the latest news in Hungary. Please do. You will be surprised. Just please do not watch English English news outlets because they don't know a fuck what is happening. Okay, if you are able, for example, see France 24 or even some German channels if you are able to do it. Okay, but Orban, for example, I have just a little intermezzo to just talk about this. Orban was restoring old palaces in Hungary with EU funds, and then he was selling them, privatizing them to local oligarchs, and he was pocketing money. And this is why right now the EU has done what it did to Hungary. And now either Hungary learns and kicks out that idiot, or they are done. Because you see, even the far right in Europe is not pro-American, is not pro-Farage. Even the bloody fascists here don't like Americans, don't like Russians. They like the idea that all of this conflict enables them to obtain power. They like that. But they don't want to be ruled by them. They don't want this Europe, democratic Europe, a defender of human rights. They want an united and austere Europe. And I'm going to be honest with you. Europe is going to become more austere. This is going to happen. Not to the degree that those people want, because there are still a lot of countermeasures in it. But this is going to happen. This is not beneficial for anyone, but it will happen. Why? Look at us. We are rapidly rearming. We know we cannot trust in the United Kingdom. For God's sake. We know we cannot trust in the US, and we have to rearm in order to defend ourselves. Now, imagine what? Imagine this. Imagine that a couple of centuries ago, a couple of decades ago, no, Europe had empires all over the world. And these were European countries competing amongst themselves and using only their forces or the forces of their alliances. Now, imagine a Europe united under a single banner, marching in the world. This is what the United States and the interest groups that are there really fear. And this is why I keep saying in my comments that Starmer has to decide. And I think he has decided to come to the side of Europe. Hopefully, I think he will do that. But he still is under the influence of those interest groups. We see it in his position on trans people. we see it in the perspective. Sorry, Mitro, it's all right. Okay, you can express your opinion in my chat. Everyone that is listening to me, look, you can criticize my ideas in the chat. We can talk about it. No issues here. Okay, no issues here. As long as everyone is civil and polite, no problem. If we all had the same ideas, this world would be a very fucking boring world. Okay? And sorry for the swearing, but I sometimes swear. Like a sailor. So this is what those groups really fear. And alarm bells started to ringing in their heads when Europe and China signed the economical agreements that they are signing. When Europe recently signed an agreement with the Central Asian countries for the and China also signed the agreement with the Central Asian countries to have a rail line from China to Europe that would carry goods in 44 days. Uh, Thank you for coming, Steven Becker. I will be wrapping up also soon. So, I think that's okay. We have this entire situation. We have Europe creating closer ties, economic ties with China. And China wants trade. All good, Metro. But and look, I'm not saying this is going to happen from here to tomorrow. Thank you, Stephen. Uh, we are seeing all of these processes. Just last week, China was meeting with the EU representatives to sign another package of agreements. And those interest groups are seeing we are going to lose money. And now I believe now they are trying to cut their losses. They are trying to maintain those interest groups that they still have in Europe. And Trump is no longer filling the shoes. I would not be surprised that Trump will not end his mandate. And this will have to be before the tipping point. I don't know for certain because I forgot what is the timeline, but I believe that uh, he has to renounce or whatever to his position before completing half of his term in order for Vance to be president for the remaining time without elections. For me, this will be the signing bell. Let's call it like this. Ring ring. If this happens in a way that Vance is able to be empowered, let's call it like this, and remember that Vance also is a part of these interest groups. He has a large slice of capital in agro-farm companies. I think BlackRock too, in the agro-farm companies that have been buying out family farms in the United States and profiting a lot. Remember this. Vance is going to be there. And then, if this happens, I am almost certain that Vance, if he's able to do it, he will turn the United States into something completely different than it is. It will no longer be the democracy that we know. It will perhaps be a false democracy. You know, only now Russia is becoming a full-blown authoritarian state. Okay? Only now. Before that, they used propaganda, they used bribe and corruption, they used a lot of things. They arrested one another, political opponent, one another was dead. Navalny, he was jailed to die, but now it's a full-blown autocracy. If it will be able to sustain itself, honestly, I have my serious doubts. Because we see Russia advancing, okay, but I also keep seeing entire battalions of Russian soldiers deserting or refusing to work, or to work, yes, or refusing to fight. So I'm not very good. And what Mitchell is saying here is absolutely right. It's not because Vance is married to an Indian woman that he is not a racist. Candace Owens is married with a neo-Nazi. Look, fascist authoritarians come in all colors and all ideologies. The people that arrested me when I was a kid, they were proud communists, and yet they were authoritarians, they were racists, they were bigots, okay, and they were constantly offending other people. They acted exactly like a bloody skinhead would act. So it's not because, and look at the UK, look at the Tories, okay, look at Reform. They have black people, they have Indian people, they don't care as long as you follow their authoritarian rule. If you go back to Germany, do you think Goebbels did not have Jewish blood? Really? Do you think a lot of characters in the German, let's call it echelon, Nazi echelon, were all purebred Aryans? Don't look at it that way. A fascist can come in all colors. A fascist can be black. A fascist can be white, yellow, polka dot, pink. They're all the bloody same. It's always the bloody same song. If Vance rises to power, I know literal. Look, I'm just saying this so that people can understand that whatever ideology we have, how very peaceful and good it can be turned into a monster to dominate you. Okay, and my family did not steal anything. My parents worked all. My mother, that's still with me. They always were always working. They didn't steal anything from no one, and yet because I spoke German with my grandfather, I spoke German with my grandfather. We were racially profiled. And but look, you must not consider. Look, don't take this the wrong way. It gave me a fixed thing, a fixed skin, like you English say, okay, and a chip in my shoulder. This is why I'm never racist with anyone. Never, because I know how it feels. And remember this: I was just like the other kids. Maybe I was a bit paler. Maybe I was a bit ginger. I was my hair was bloody. It was the now it's gray, but it was bloody. I used to say Kate Bush color, because my hair was that color. Maybe that's why I still like to watch Kate Bush videos. I don't. But look, don't think that I am saying that all communists are bad or communism is bad or whatever. No, I'm just trying to say this. Okay, now, there I go ranting again. Sorry. But if we see Vance rising to power or some equivalent character, I'm deeply concerned and I think we will have a lot of troubles. But if we see a mere figurehead, or maybe Trump ending his term and going back to do what he was doing while he was president, speaking shit and playing golf, then I would think that they will want to keep a low profile, still in the background, still controlling, but in the background, like they were. But who am I? Now, the main idea I want you to take from this is to not see, for example, the events in the United States, the events in the United Kingdom, do not see them as, for example, Russia against the United Kingdom, Russia against the United States against Russia, whatever. Don't see it like this. See it as people with money, oligarchs and power, in the United States, in Russia, and some in Europe, and a lot of them in the United Kingdom, wanting profit and control. And when you listen to these people talking, you have to think this. This is what I keep telling my nephews. Okay? This is what I keep telling my nephews. When someone is telling you something that seems to be okay, make sure that he is not dragging you into his narrative. For example, I will give you this example. For us, immigration is bad. Immigration is not controlled. We have to stop the boats. This cannot be we are losing our culture. No, we are losing our culture. If I was a regular English person, man, I will be worried. I want my culture to continue. Maybe I'm not a racist. Maybe I'm not a bigot. I'm a normal person. Immigration is uncontrolled. Well, I watch in the TV all day boats coming in with thousands of people and this and that. Okay, so I would also be worried. And then comes the kicker. The Farash says, I can solve this. You vote for me and I will solve it. And he does not tell you how. He just lulls you into that hope that he will give you what you want. Just like the people that voted for Donald Trump. And since you don't have this chip on your shoulder, okay, and a lot of distrust in other people that I, for bad or for good, I have, you will be dragged into that narrative. That is funny, Mitro. Good one. You will be dragged into that narrative. Don't believe me, as intelligent as you may be, if the demagogue that has this capability of touching the right buttons, you will be dragged into it. I sometimes watch a guy named Konstantin that has a channel named Inside Russia. Now he has become a bit American delusional. Okay, I think he's getting a bit tired of all of this, and he's repeating himself. And I had kind of an argument with him, and I decided to simply just watch from the background, unsubscribe, and I just watch his videos and drop a like, but I no longer subscribe. But he said something when he was talking about how Putin rose to power that was very interesting. You had Yeltsin. Yeltsin was a womanizer, drunken fool. Okay, he was no longer that strong man, that tall man, strong man that got up in the tanks and stopped the coup and protected Gorbachev. He was no longer that person. Okay, he was a sick man that had a sick family also, that had a lot of debts, but that also had a lot of money, a lot of power, and that he called this guy Putin, that was a competent guy, and he made him to serve him. This is why dictators choose lesser people to succeed them because they want someone that will ensure his retirement. I don't know if Putin is already doing that, but but uh, I have a feeling that he is trying to do that. But again, that is for another stream. I have to wrap this up. It's already very late, so let's finish it up now. And the same is happening right now with Vance. Okay, what we have to understand here is this, and I will go back to this. The demagogue calls you. It calls to your basic instincts, instinct of protecting yourself, of protecting your family, even of protecting your nation, your country, your culture. As I was saying, if you are from a diverse background, like I am, for example, you will also feel it, but to a degree, you will be very suspicious of it, okay? Because you will know that when someone is trying to say that, they want something from you. They really want. And they want to drag you into your narrative. And this is how we had sayings like Brexit. You know, they took an idea, patriotism and fear. Turkey is going to be a part of the USA. Millions of Turkish people will invade the United Kingdom, or that idiotic, idiotic, uh, idiotic Yeltsin, idiotic Boris with the bloody keepers in the ice when the EU was not doing no such thing, telling the farmers that the EU rules were dampening their business and that if they were independent, they could do whatever they wanted, they could sell to Europe however they want. To an informed person, and I luckily can say this, I am one, this would sound very odd. You are going to leave the EU and you're going to have everything. But to those people that didn't even know that most of the taxes that they were complaining about were being applied to them by the bloody British government and not the EU, I'll give you an example. The sugar and salt tax. You know how that works in the EU? The state members decide that there is a maximum threshold of sugar and salt and a minimum and a minimum threshold of salt. What does this mean? This means that, for example, if the maximum is 10, then some countries can have their sugar and salt tax in 10 at 10, which is considered safe for human consumption. Let's call it like this: safe in medical terms. Or they can have 0. Portugal, for example, has a high rate of heart diseases and other related cancers and related cancers with sugar and salt consumption. So our government applied the most draconian taxes on sugar and salt. Sugary drinks, for example, like Coca-Cola, for example, are highly taxed here. Salted foods, very taxed here. School meals, for example, they are banning all of that. Why? Because our government decide. We have the sovereignty to decide this. We have the absolute sovereignty to decide this. For example, Spain produces a product that has 8 grams or 8 in the scale of 1 to 10, this imaginary scale that I created now for you to understand. Imagine this. For a specific product, Portugal has 2 maximum maximum of salt. Spain sells a product to us that is 5 in salt. When that product is sold here, it gets taxed, those extra 3. It's more expensive than, for example, in Spain. Do you understand how this works? And your government was applying the maximum taxes to the goods in order to profit from you, because they were importing a lot of, as you know better than me, you are in the UK, you know this. Your government was importing all of these goods and applying maximum taxes. Why? Money. Just like they were the gateway into Europe. And now it's all gone. And now you have, across the pond, the Americans discovering that the tariffs and all the shit that Trump is promising them, it never happened. It could never happen. And they are trying to use the Epstein files as an excuse to kick him out. But I'm not sure if it's not those interest groups that want to put Vance in the place of Trump, or maybe someone else, or maybe to go back into, like I was saying, maybe go back into the background and continue to profit, because if Trump goes out, they will still have the contracts and they will still have all the money and all the damage that they have done to the American state system. Okay, and they are using that as a scapegoat and an excuse to kick him out. Isn't that interesting? It's just logic. Again, and just to wrap this up, follow the money trail. Educate yourself. Education, education, education. When I don't know something, you know what I do? I watch a video, I go online, I read a book. I have a lot of books I like to read, and I educate myself. I know a lot about bakery, cake making, patisserie, all of that. Okay, I know a lot about pizzas. I learn with the pizzaiolo. I know a lot about law, about economics. Before I had to stop my degree, I had 3 years of political economics, aced it, loved it. I love economics. Economics is wonderful. It might look boring. I also like psychology, philosophy. I educate myself. When I don't know something, for example, like I was telling you, before I decided to make this stream, I spent at least an hour studying what I was going to trying to tell you, trying to explain to you that we cannot see this as country against country. We have to see this as interest groups, as money, people with money, and that there is no conspiracy behind this. This is not some kind of international Jewish conspiration, you know. This is not some kind of American overall trying to control, or this is not some kind of Putin spreading his wings across the sky like a mythological bat of whatever. No, it's nothing like that. It's very simple and it's very pragmatic. Greed, money, and power. Power gives money that feeds greed. Well, uh, I will be wrapping up the stream now. As you can see, I'm also a bit tired in my voice. I would I would like to thank you all that came to the stream. No, the ones I'm seeing here, the ones that might have been lurking. No, Stephen Banker, Casper Notter, Katsai Muse, Mitro. I hope I did not forget anyone. Oh, let's see. No. I would like to thank you all for coming to my stream. Like I said in the post, I would I would try I will try to make a stream every Saturday around this time, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, always in this time frame. Tomorrow I will be recording some more videos, be talking about some different things. Uh, Look, that is all. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful week. Okay. Take your time, smell the roses, because after all, the world is too good. It's too good. World is too good for us, and we sometimes, pollute it and burn it. That's humanity. Okay, excellent song, Scorpions, Humanity. I like the Scorpions. Okay, have a great. Oh, fast fingers is weakening. Have a great weekend, everyone, and thank you for coming.